want you to take a second and just think about your heartbeat.
Okay.
Right now, as you're listening, maybe you're sitting in your car or just walking around your house, there is this muscle in your chest quietly doing its job.
Yeah, totally in the background.
Exactly. And over the course of today, that heart is going to beat about 100,000 times.
Wow. Yeah.
And what is truly wild about that to me is how unbelievably narrow the margin of error is. I mean, if that rhythm slows down just a little bit, you fall into a coma.
Right.
But if it speeds up just a fraction too much, you suffer a massive heart attack. So your actual survival, like your minute-to-minute biological existence, depends entirely on remaining inside this tiny, invisible corridor of balance.
It really is the ultimate tightrope walk, isn't it?
It really is.
And the profound irony here is that our bodies execute this flawless wisdom of the middle every single millisecond. I mean, from the finest biochemical processes in our cells right up to the whole architecture of our nervous system, our biology fundamentally understands balance.
But our waking minds.
Oh, our waking minds have completely forgotten it.
Yeah, we seem to have collectively bought into this massive illusion. It's probably the most dangerous mathematical deception of our modern era.
What do you mean by mathematical deception?
Well, we just assume, like without ever really questioning it, that if a little bit of something is good, then the absolute maximum of it must be perfection.
Oh, yeah. The whole more is always better trap.
Right. And that brings us to the core of our deep dive today. We are exploring a unified concept that spans across historical texts, philosophical treatises, and even modern biological research. It all points to one thing: the architecture of balance.
And our mission today is really to figure out how combining modern biological science with ancient spiritual wisdom can help us escape this exhausting modern all-or-nothing trap.
Yes, because it is exhausting.
It's completely draining. And that escape route actually starts right where you began with biology.
Makes sense.
Because right now we're constantly oscillating between total self-optimization, the biohacking, the relentless grinding, and absolute burnout.
Yeah, it's either puritanical strictness or totally numbing out on the couch. There's no in-between.
Exactly. And to understand why that oscillation is literally destroying us, we have to look at a core biological mechanism. It's called homeostasis.
Let's unpack that a bit. I mean, I know homeostasis generally means maintaining stability, but how does that actually play out in our daily lives?
So think of it as the natural drive of any complex system to find and maintain a dynamic equilibrium. Like look at your autonomic nervous system.
Okay.
It operates in this constant, intricate dance between two modes. You have the sympathetic mode, which is all about performance, alertness, that classic fight-or-flight response.
Right over the gas pedal.
Exactly, a gas pedal. And on the other side, you have the parasympathetic mode, which governs rest, digestion, and cellular regeneration. So the health of the organism relies entirely on shifting fluidly between those two states.
It makes me think of a car engine.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, because you can't just redline your car constantly. I mean, if you keep the RPMs in the red while you're driving down the highway for hours, the engine block is literally going to melt.
It will completely destroy itself.
You'll burn through all your oil, destroy the pistons, and the whole system collapses. But on the flip side, you can't just leave a car sitting in a damp garage for 20 years either, right?
No, absolutely not. Because the danger of that engine melting is what biologists would call a loss of homeostasis. And you're completely right about the garage scenario, too.
It just rusts out.
Right. If a system permanently rests, it atrophies. It breaks down from sheer disuse. So if we permanently leave that narrow regulatory corridor of balance in either direction, like too much stress or too much stagnation, the structure inevitably collapses.
Biology absolutely demands that equilibrium.
It's non-negotiable.
Which raises a massive question for me. If our biology demands balance to survive, why does modern society actively push us toward the extremes? Like, why does the middle feel so foreign, almost unnatural to us right now?
Well, we've built an environment that structurally penalizes the middle. I mean, we live in an attention economy that systematically feeds on sensory overload.
That's so true.
The algorithms that dictate our news feeds, the social networks, the polarized political discourse, they all profit from hysterical outrage.
Yeah, nuance doesn't trend. No one goes viral for saying, well, the issue is actually quite complex and requires a measured approach.
Nobody clicks on that.
No.
The glaring, loud extreme is what draws the masses and, honestly, the ad revenue. The system is fundamentally designed to feed us extremes, which forces us into this grueling logic of all or nothing.
But what's incredible is that this biological imperative for balance isn't just some modern scientific discovery, is it?
Not at all. It is the absolute bedrock of almost every major wisdom tradition in human history.
This was one of the biggest aha moments for me when preparing for this deep dive. Like, thousands of years before anyone knew what a parasympathetic nervous system was, ancient thinkers had already drawn up a blueprint for human psychological survival.
They just observed human nature.
Yeah, they realized people simply break under the one-sidedness of extremes.
Take Aristotle, for instance.
Oh, right.
He shaped so much of Western thought with his concept of the golden mean. He argued that virtue is never the opposite of a vice.
Wait, let me make sure I'm getting this. Virtue isn't the opposite of vice. How does that work in practice?
So let's use courage as an example. We usually think of courage as having zero fear,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, like an action movie hero.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Aristotle points out that a total absence of fear isn't courage, it's just reckless madness.
Oh, wow. Because if you have no fear, you're going to blindly charge into danger and get yourself destroyed.
Precisely. True courage is the masterful, consciously chosen midpoint between paralyzing cowardice on one end and blind, foolhardy recklessness on the other.
That makes so much sense.
And generosity is the exact same way. It's the incredibly difficult middle ground between stingy hoarding and naive, ruinous wastefulness.
You know, we also see this with Maimonides, the medieval Jewish philosopher. What fascinated me was that he wasn't just a theologian, he was a highly respected medical doctor.
Right, he understood the body.
Yes, and he explicitly connected the physical necessity of balance to spiritual health, calling it the golden path. He basically prescribed avoiding extremes for the health of the soul in the exact same way he prescribed it for the health of the body.
And we see that structural blueprint everywhere. Like, the Islamic tradition emphasizes finding a navigational line, a straight path that guides a person safely between the chaos of bottomless error on one side and the absolute toxicity of religious or secular excess on the other.
You see the exact same principle in the Taoist balance of yin and yang, too.
Yeah, or the Buddha's middle way, which deliberately rejected both radical starvation and unchecked hedonism.
Okay, I have to push back here for a second, though.
Go for it.
Because it's easy for Aristotle to preach balance while walking around a sunlit courtyard in ancient Greece. But how do you actually do that today? Like, how do you walk the middle path in a modern corporate culture that actively fires people who don't redline the engine? Doesn't the middle just sound like a lukewarm compromise, like a gray mediocrity where you just get left behind?
That is the most pervasive modern misconception, without a doubt. But philosophically, the middle is not some gray, unnoticeable mediocrity. A really powerful metaphor for this is thinking of the middle as the eye of the hurricane.
The eye of the hurricane. Okay, that implies there is a massive storm raging all around you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And holding your ground in the center of that storm requires immense effort. It is a position of enormous inner strength.
It's not passive at all.
No, it is the point of powerful, watchful calm amidst a roaring, destructive chaos. Walking this middle path is intellectually and emotionally demanding. It's an active, conscious stance where you are constantly protecting yourself against psychological, social, and spiritual overload.
So it actually takes significantly more energy to hold the center than it does to just give up and get swept away by the storm.
Vastly more energy.
Which totally explains why we are so susceptible to the extremes. It's just easier to pick a radical side and shut your brain off.
It frees us from the genuinely hard work of weighing nuances, enduring ambiguity and staying in a constant dialogue with reality.
That is so true.
But there's an even more dangerous psychological trap here.
Yeah.
Excess rarely shows up looking like a vice.
What do you mean?
It brilliantly masquerades as a virtue. It disguises itself as ambitious perfectionism or absolute self-sacrificing devotion.
Oh, so it tricks us into feeding our own egos.
There you go.
Like if you separate yourself from the broad masses through some extreme diet or by totally giving up all worldly pleasures or through sheer inhuman performance metrics at work, you start to feel superior.
It breeds a very specific kind of spiritual or intellectual narcissism. It's sheer arrogance disguised as humility. And history gives us some phenomenal anecdotes about this human tendency.
Yeah, there was one story that really stood out to me from the Islamic tradition. During a great pilgrimage, the Prophet Muhammad was instructing his followers on a symbolic stoning ritual.
Right, the Hajj.
Yeah. And human nature being what it is, you'd think people would want to heave massive boulders to prove how incredibly devoted and pious they were, right? dramatic, sweeping
Of
heroics.
course.
But he explicitly told them to pick up tiny pebble-sized stones from the ground, just little pebbles.
The mundane detail of the pebbles is the whole point there. He used that moment to warn against exaggeration in faith, pointing out that previous generations were literally destroyed by their own fanatical zeal.
Wow.
True growth is taming your ego in small, daily, almost invisible steps. It is not exhausting yourself in one-off heroic acts that you can't possibly sustain.
There's also that great Talmudic story about the wedding cup.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, remind me how that goes.
So there is a wise rabbi at a joyous, exuberant wedding. And right in front of all the guests, at the height of the celebration, he intentionally takes a beautiful, highly valuable cup and shatters it.
Which just seems insane. Like, why ruin the party?
Well, he didn't do it out of anger. He saw that the ecstatic joy of the celebration was bubbling over into the manic, so he shattered the cup to ground the guests to prevent them from losing their grip on reality.
That's intense.
It was a jarring reminder to maintain intellectual sobriety and an awareness of the world's brokenness, even in the middle of jubilation. It checks the human tendency to idolize things.
Right, idolizing the finite. When we take something human and limited, whether it's a romantic partner, a political ideology, a career, or even wealth, and we demand that it provide us with an infinite sense of meaning, we break the balance.
We completely overload it.
Yeah, we set ourselves up for inevitable pain because a finite thing just can't bear the weight of infinite expectations.
Which is actually the perfect bridge into how we apply this today. Because the theory is airtight, but we need a functional compass for our modern lives. Let's look at how this eye of the hurricane concept applies to a few specific dimensions of human existence.
Okay, let's trace how that works, starting with our societal discourse. Like, how does the middle way apply when everyone is literally screaming at each other on the internet?
Well, think of the ideal community as an objective witness, like a witness in a courtroom.
Okay.
A witness is only credible and only useful to justice if they are completely objective, calm, and unbiased. The moment you join a radical bubble or an ideological echo chamber, you automatically lose your ability to bear witness to the truth.
Because your extreme exaggeration makes you entirely blind to the arguments and fears of anyone else.
Exactly.
So the people who actually hold society together are the bridge builders, and they are standing right in the middle, right in the crossfire.
Taking hits from all sides.
Yeah, you get attacked from both extremes because you dare to speak with nuance when the mob just wants to chant simple slogans.
It is a remarkably difficult position to hold. And enduring that crossfire brings us directly to the mental health aspect of all this. The spiritual wisdom here aligns flawlessly with modern neurobiology.
How so?
These traditions emphasize that life, even spiritual life, is meant to be a relief, not a crushing torture.
That's true. Historical religious figures didn't just preach, they lived highly anchored lives. Like, a leader might command armies and carry the weight of uniting a fractured society, but they also deliberately slept. They milked sheep, they patched shoes, they played on the floor with their grandchildren.
They stayed deeply anchored in mundane, everyday tasks.
Because that anchors the nervous system.
Modern resilience research tells us the exact same thing. If you systematically ignore your body, your social bonds, or your psyche for some supposedly higher goal, whether that's a massive corporate career or academic fame, you're sacrificing yourself senselessly.
True growth requires rhythm. It requires pauses. It requires you to actually acknowledge your physical limits.
And if you don't take those pauses, you burn out, which bleeds directly into our private lives. Think about how that loss of balance affects our relationships.
Oh, I imagine it mirrors modern attachment theory perfectly.
It really does. Extreme behavior ruins connection. On one extreme, you have total avoidance, running away from vulnerability, which leads to coldness and isolation.
And on the other extreme,
You have anxious, suffocating control, jealousy, or totally giving up your own identity. It just robs the relationship of oxygen.
So what does the eye of the hurricane look like in a marriage or a friendship then?
The middle way manifests as deep, authentic mercy. But, and this is crucial, this mercy should never be confused with naive weakness or a fear of conflict.
Right.
The golden mean in love is looking at your partner's inevitable stakes with kindness and grace, while simultaneously having the courage to set extremely clear, healthy boundaries.
Not to punish them, but to allow for actual mutual growth.
Exactly.
It's a razor-thin line to walk.
It is.
And if that need for equilibrium governs our nervous system and our intimate relationships, It totally makes sense that the same logic applies to our macro systems too, like the economy.
It absolutely does. It acts as a broad economic critique of both extremes. Like unbridled, purely profit-maximizing capitalism is basically the dangerous hoarding of resources.
Yeah.
But rigid socialism is equally critiqued as a stultifying force that kills individual incentive. The overarching ethic here views wealth like flowing water.
I love that imagery. Water has to circulate, it has to flow to fertilize the land. If you hoard it all behind a massive dam, or if you artificially restrict its flow entirely, the water becomes stagnant and toxic and the surrounding land just dies.
And we can expand this economic concept to include ecological balance as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the modern industrial obsession with infinite growth on a finite planet is the ultimate loss of homeostasis.
Systematically destroying ecosystems for short-term profit is a monumental act of destructive exaggeration.
Because, again, we are demanding the infinite from the finite Earth. And this same need for holistic integration applies to our intellectual development, too. Think of historical high watermarks, like the Golden Age of Al-Andalus in medieval Spain.
Oh, in places like Cordoba.
Exactly. They didn't separate knowledge into artificial hostile camps.
Right, you had these brilliant universal scholars, philosophers who were also theologians, who were also translating ancient Greek texts, all while working as practicing medical doctors studying human anatomy.
They instinctively understood the law of the middle. They didn't see science and faith as enemies.
Because a society that only promotes cold, technical knowledge loses its moral compass entirely. But a society that isolates itself out of a fear of modernity and condemns the intellect just withers away into superstition.
We need the razor-sharp, doubting scientific intellect and the vast, sensitive, ethical heart. They are two equal, indispensable wings of the exact same bird.
You can't fly with just one.
You really can't.
You know, this has been such a profound reframing for me. The philosophical search for the middle isn't a state of stagnation at all. It makes me think of a majestic, ancient river.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, the middle way is not a blind, destructive flash flood that just tears everything apart in a moment of rage, but it's also not a stagnant, dead pool of water.
Oh, yeah.
It is constant, it is balanced, and precisely because it respects its boundaries and stays in its bed over the centuries, it is capable of carving out massive canyons and shaping entire landscapes.
In a world that is loudly and aggressively pulling you toward the extremes with fear and shiny promises, moderation actually becomes the most rebellious, courageous, and intellectually demanding lifestyle choice you can make.
It really is a rebellion.
It is recognizing your limits, admitting that you need deep sleep, taking purposeless rest, letting go of control. These are not failures of your willpower that need to be hacked or optimized. They are the sacred rights of your biology and your mind. True, lasting greatness is never found in the excess and the noise. It is found in the sovereign mastery of the middle.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought to carry into your day. We've talked a lot about the attention economy pushing us to the margins. And as algorithms and artificial intelligence increasingly automate our baseline tasks, the extremes, the loud, radical opinions, the generated outrage, the hyper-optimized productivity hacks, they are only going to get cheaper and easier to produce.
That'll just be everywhere.
Exactly. The extremes will become the default background noise of our lives. So what if, in the next decade, the ultimate human luxury, the ultimate premium skill, isn't speed or optimization, but the simple, unhackable capacity to stand still in the middle? What would it look like for you to cultivate that quiet, demanding luxury in your life today?